Frank Klose needs to school all you people.
He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Frank's mailbag was very busy today. I kept getting these text message alerts in my pocket, and I was like, what's going on here? All these people had text message questions for today's mailbag session for Frank, but I want to start with this. He says, forget the bullpen. It's time for the Phillies to let Vince Velasquez go. The last time I looked at Velasquez, he had an ERA under 2. What has happened since, Frank?
Well, apparently he does not like to follow his catcher's lead. The all-star catcher that the Phillies gave up 3 players for, 1 major league catcher and their best pitching prospect. And this is not the first time this season that he has failed to follow the lead of JT Realmuto. And basically, if he's just going to be messing around, I don't think the Phillies need to deal with that anymore.
So you're saying because he's essentially a malcontent or he doesn't listen?
Rogue. He goes rogue.
He does. He does go rogue. Now, I really kind of want to go back and...
Has this been addressed by the Kapler or anybody?
This was not the first time. So there was one instance where I was surprised even that on the Phillies radio network, Gabe Kapler even said, hey, listen, he's got to trust JT back there. He's got to trust JT back there. And this is a few starts ago. And to see last night where he's still doing the same thing that he was doing with the other catchers that they've had over the years. You know, it's one thing if you're the Phillies and it's 2016 and Cameron Rupp is your catcher and Velasquez is new on the team and trying to find his way. You know, fine, maybe you could deal with it a little bit, but this is 2019. The Phillies just signed Bryce Harper. The Phillies just traded for JT Realmuto. They're not messing around anymore. So, Velasquez is still doing the same old things that people have written about. You know, the Jim Salisbury's, Todd Zaleckis, Matt Gilbs of the world, Matt Breens of the world have written for years that he's got to be more efficient with his pitches. He's got to stop going for strikeouts. And what's he do? He's still going for strikeouts. He gets 2 strikes, only wants to throw his fastball, boom, home run into the seats. I mean, at some point, the Phillies just can't mess around with this anymore, right? I mean, the Phillies got rid of Nick Pivetta. Well, not got rid of, but they sent Nick Pivetta down to AAA when he couldn't get with the program. And so, I think they really need to take a hard look at doing the same thing with Vince Velasquez at this point because, I think the fact that last night it was so public, and I will say JT Realmuto was very polite about it, saying he's frustrated, he doesn't trust what I'm doing. And the fact that this is spilled out to this degree, I think is an indication that this is kind of hit the head and it's probably time for him to go.
Frank, that's a perfect segue into Greg's first question of the mailbag. He wants to know, what is Velasquez's trade value? He thinks he's on board if dealing Velasquez helps bring in a guy who can solidify the back end of the bullpen, but who's available and who potentially will be available?
See, here's the thing. If you're another team that would trade for Velasquez, now, I'm not saying Velasquez has no value, all right? We all know that he's got an electric arm. He's got a lot of talent. But, with 2 more years left of control after this one, there's going to be enough teams out there, teams that are perhaps rebuilding, that are looking to sort of build some value, that are looking for somebody, or perhaps that they have an immediate need right now. They're desperate for anybody to throw the ball. But those types of teams are not going to really land you the type of player that Greg was asking about in his question, is because, you might get a perhaps lower level type player that may or may not work out down the line. If you're the Phillies at this point, trying to make a trade with somebody, is a contender going to want to trade for somebody that's giving you these kind of headaches? Is a contender somebody who has a relief ace available to trade you? Those types of teams aren't going to match up in a trade, and you might be looking for a Texas Rangers or a San Diego Padres that maybe says, okay, well, maybe if we get him to follow the program, maybe if a change of scenery helps him, we'll have him for the next 2 years, and then they might be able to give something up. But those are the types of teams that have the type of relief ace that Greg is talking about there. So I think if you can, you try to trade for somebody that you can have in the minor leagues to possibly develop into something, or maybe you take somebody else's headache. But I don't think the Phillies want any headaches at this point.
The problem I see, Frank, for Velasquez and maybe his value, if it's not a fourth or fifth starter for another team, I don't know what is, because if a guy doesn't listen to his catcher and if a guy throws an inordinate amount of pitches per inning, then you don't want him anywhere in your 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th innings. If anything, he's a long man. And I don't know, I don't want to say he's too talented to be a long man, but that's not a role that other teams are out there. Oh, I got to get myself a long man. That's basically a banished starting pitcher.
Right, and that's exactly why, Jeff, that I didn't think that Vince Velasquez belongs in a bullpen, because I think if you look at his numbers too, he's gonna give some of his worst innings in his first inning. As a guy that just wants to throw 8,000 miles an hour, it takes him a while to sort of get that under control. And I just don't see him working in the bullpen, but especially if you're not going to listen to your catcher. If you're not going to listen to your catcher, innings 1 through 4, since that seems to be where he maxes out a lot of the times. Why would he trust the catcher in inning 6? So, for me personally, I would look to the minor leagues, where Cole Irvin now has a full year's worth of starts at AAA. He's got 32 starts. His ERA's come in around 2.5. And he's won 16 games in last season and this season combined at AAA. So it might be time to turn the page and see if Cole Irvin can get a start, just because, too, the Phillies now have a 40-man roster spot open after Aaron Altair departed.
We'll talk with Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. How about Shane wants to know, Aaron Nola making small improvements, handful of starts, but he's still not the same guy we saw last year who was top 3 in the Cy Young. Are you noticing anything about his mechanics, arm angle, anything? Do you have any concerns about Nola?
I personally have seen nothing that would indicate that he's not who he was. The only thing I can really think of is if you look at last year to this year, what changed for Aaron Nola? Well, one, you added Bryce Harper to your team, and the Phillies spent a lot of money to do that. Does he feel like he has to do more? Is that extra pressure from that? Or how about the fact that he signed a $45 million contract and he wants to live up to that? Those are common things that are kind of the intangibles of baseball that can affect a player. And, maybe he was trying too hard. Maybe he was trying to do too much. And those first few starts, indeed, were some of the worst he's had in a while. But I have confidence that he's going to settle into who he really is. And, I think we just need to remember, too, at the same time, that what we saw last year is not something that he's going to repeat many times in his career, even as an ace pitcher, right? Last year was one of the top pitching performances the Phillies organization has seen since Roy Halladay. So it's not a situation where I think anything is wrong. I think he just needs to settle in, and perhaps having Jake Arrieta, who's pitching pretty well overall, and other veterans like that, would kind of help him ease up a little bit. But I think he'll be just fine.
Hey, Frank, I have a two-part question for you. One, you were asked a question that I think everybody who covers baseball in almost every city is being asked, and that's, what's going on with Craig Kimbrel and Dallas Keuchel, any interest from the Phillies or any team? And I guess the second part of that was I've been hearing and reading that because so many good pitchers have been struggling, that they believe that the ball might be doctored. Someone said it was kind of like a spring training ball, and you're seeing a lot more home runs. Any word from Phillies pitchers on that, if they feel like there's something new or different-ish about the baseball, and, of course, with that being leading to the demands for guys like Dallas Keuchel and Craig Kimbrel?
Well, I'll start with the doctoring of the baseball first. Now, I think it is still a small sample size at this point, to really see what the players are doing. We know over the last several years they've been increasing the emphasis on the launch angle. So when you make contact, it's supposed to get in the air and go over the wall. So I think that could have something to do with it as those types of philosophies sort of go around baseball a little more. And I still caution to say that it's a small sample size at this point in the season. I think maybe we should revisit that in something, as you get to months like July and August, as time goes on a little bit. I don't really think that I've heard any pitchers say to this point that something is wrong with the baseball, although that's something that I could definitely keep an eye on going forward. But in terms of Kimbrel and Keuchel, Craig Kimbrel, his situation was he sort of went out there at the beginning of the offseason and said, look, I want 6 years at $100 million, which would be way more money. and more years than even the likes of Kenley Jansen, who's arguably the best closer in the game. So Craig Kimbrel, having struggled in the postseason, I think what happened for a lot of teams were they just said, all right, forget this. I'm not even going to venture down that road. And by the time he was willing to come down a little bit, most teams had spent their money or had their rosters set. And, there's concerns about the postseason don't have teams biting. And I think he's somebody that really needs to just sign this one-year deal and show that he really is for real. He is that
he went from a 5-year ask down to a 3-year ask, right?
Supposedly he started with 6 years and $100 million, and teams thought that was too much.
Good luck.
And I would say, yeah, exactly.
Coming off of the playoff that he did last year, where
God bless him.
Right, he wasn't very good last year in the playoffs.
He wasn't, and I think too that one other thing that's going against him, and it's also going against Dallas Keuchel, is that they both have draft picks attached to them too. So you're asking teams to spend an exorbitant amount of money, and at the same time also give up a draft pick. And I don't think anybody's really wanting to do that right now. Now, when you get to the month of June after the draft, that draft pick goes away. So what you might do is see a team willing to spend, if he has in his head he's worth $18 million, and by June, if you're paying a prorated amount, you might be able to do that, and without a draft pick attached. I could see the Phillies maybe doing that for either player. But the other side of this too is, the Dallas Keuchel at this point, he's still saying, well, I'm worth what I'm worth, and that's what I'm going to pitch for. They're kind of being stubborn here. Now, we saw Gio Gonzalez basically with his tail between his legs take a $3 million deal with the Yankees, and he ends up opting out of that and signing a similar deal with the Brewers. At some point, you just need to pitch. And, there's been plenty of times in recent history where, a player didn't sign on time, like Lance Lynn, and then the next year, after he, gets tail between his legs, signs a low-paying deal, goes out and gets another deal. So you really got to look at this as a big picture if you're the player. You still can maximize your money down the line, but at this point, you have to come down for your demands to pitch for somebody. And, the Phillies, we talked about the luxury tax before, too. That number is going to be coming down because the room that they have under that will definitely grow in terms of a player, because if they only had $18 million left at the beginning of the season, if they're going to pay, let's just say, Kimbrel wants $18 million a season still, and you can pay a prorated amount of that, then you're only getting hit for $9 if you make it halfway through the season. So this will probably drag out a little bit longer. It sounds like either player is coming down from their initial demands, and so I don't think the Phillies really want to bite, and that could change. But there's really no smoke around either player for any team.
All right, we'll keep our eye on that. I think all the teams around baseball will. Frank Klose, at Frank Klose. Get your mailbag questions in for next week. And, of course, every Tuesday at this time, we talk Phillies with Frank Klose from 97.3 ESPN.com. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Frank.
All right, Frank Klose, like all guests have here via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.